Hello and welcome to another edition of The Tigers Down Under. I'm your host, as always, Alex, and with me this week I have Dan. How are you, Dan?
Yeah, pretty good. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. Look, it was a mixed set of results this week. It was our first defeat of the season against West Ham in the Cup, but we bounced back in the league with a fantastic win. So we'll start with that performance in the League Cup against West Ham. A little bit of controversy before the game actually started, with a couple of the West Ham players testing positive to COVID, as well as the manager, David Moyes. A little bit surprising, or I guess suspect about the fact that the two players were named in the starting 11 and that they received the positive test results pretty soon before kickoff. What did you make of that whole situation, and whether the game should have gone ahead?
Yeah, look, I don't know. It's a weird one. One which is probably not going to be an isolated incident in the coming months. But look, I'm so far away from everything. I guess I just sort of trust that that they know what they were doing. They made the right call, and that there's not going to be any fallout from something like this. Over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah,
Hopefully, we don't have flare-ups within our squad, or even within their own squad, anything
well,
like that.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I was going to say, I mean, obviously we played on the weekend, as did West Ham, so it's a very far cry from before the lockdown, where you had Arteta and Hudson-Odoi testing positive, and that basically triggered the entire shutdown of football. So it seems we've come a long way in terms of responsiveness to positive COVID tests, with Moyes pretty much just managing remotely for the league game on the weekend. On the game itself, a 5-1 defeat, Wilkes with a consolation goal late in the piece. Um, on one hand, disappointing that Jared Bowen didn't play, which was part of the lure of the tie, I suppose. Snodgrass scoring the opening goal for West Ham, and a pretty disappointing result, but maybe one that wasn't to be unexpected, considering the fact that West Ham went in with a pretty strong lineup.
Yeah, look, I think the result, while disappointing, I don't think the performance from us was particularly poor. We just came up against a reasonably class opposition, even if they're not going particularly well in the Premier League or whatever. They've got a lot stronger depth and a higher quality player than we currently have within our own playing ranks, and I think that's what sort of counted against us.
Yeah, and look, you look at the fact that they beat West Ham 4-0 on the weekend just past, and they seem to certainly be building a bit of strength in their ranks. Just a quick shout out to Darren, who's watching us from Ireland. We're doing well, Darren. Cheers for watching live. We always appreciate live viewers, so thanks for that. I guess the main talking point out of our squad was the fact that we did make a few rotations, especially in the defensive part of the ground. And it was Long's first start of the season in goal. And, I copped a bit of hate on Twitter as well for being a little bit critical of his performance at times. And I'm sure there'd be some who'd look at it and say this justifies the fact that Ingram's starting in the league. Ingram's still yet to concede a goal in the league. Long conceding 5 goals in the Cup. It's probably a little bit of an unfortunate coincidence. I don't know if Ingram would have done much better against West Ham, but how did you view the changes, and did you think anyone who came into that League Cup side really forced McCann's hand for selection in the league?
I was probably a little bit surprised by how many changes were actually made. The talk seemed to be that we were wanting to put out just about the strongest team, and that not many players would be changed, and then there were quite a few. I think on Long, it's hard to blame him for that scoreline. Whether Ingram even in form, maybe it's only 4-1 or something like that. But
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think it's a harsh call to say that he was at fault. I don't think there was any clear cut any of those goals that were clearly his fault, or that he was at fault for. Where there have been games previously, or towards the end of last season, where you could definitely pinpoint moments that goals were scored that came from his errors.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think everyone did a good job. looking back, I can't pinpoint anyone who stood out as being sensational. So I guess there's your answer.
No, fair enough. Probably more to talk about from that Northampton result, and it did make it 3 wins from 3 to start the season. And as the title of the podcast suggests, we are rewriting the record books. First time ever in City's history that we've started with 3 wins and 0 goals conceded. So tremendous effort in the league. And we've said pre-season, we've said over the first few weeks, McGann had to do a lot of work to win back the supporters after the way last season went. If it was a poor start to the season, his head would be on the chopping block pretty quickly. And he's started the season as well as he could. You could complain that we haven't scored more goals, but I don't think anyone's complaining with the start that we've made. 2-0 win against Northampton. Adelican on debut starts, gets the assist for the second goal. Honeyman just commanding in midfield. And once again, a completely commanding team performance from the boys.
Yeah, I think what was really pleasing for me was that we had a couple of players out that you would say influential players. The Smallwood, the captain's out, Wilkes is out, and the guys who came in, we still managed to get the job done. Where I think previously, particularly last year, with 1 or 2 key players out, we sort of fell to pieces. We seem to have enough, whatever it is, team morale, bonding, whatever solidity that we seem to have. We're overcoming those obstacles. It's early days, but we're doing a lot better in that regard. Honeyman's the free kick was beautiful for Keane Lewis Potter, and then a great run, but also a fantastic ball from Adelican. I don't even know how he saw that pass to play it, let alone then actually play the ball. It's
very instinctive, yeah. Yeah, no, certainly. And I guess the other talking point or the other interesting fact of the starting 11 was Alfie Jones playing in midfield, I guess because of that Smallwood injury. And we'll talk in a second about Slater coming in from Sheffield United, but just bolstering those midfield ranks. But Jones looked quite solid in midfield.
Yeah, well, I think we talked about, might have been last week, that with Meyer coming in and Jones and a couple of those guys were a little bit... They could play in a couple of positions across the field, a little bit flexible. And I think I made mention that, Jones could play in midfield, Meyer could play at the top of the thing, and so you had a couple of that gave us a little bit more depth than maybe it looked like we had on paper. And there you go, Smallwood's out, Jones steps into midfield and has a good game. So more power to him.
No, absolutely. And it does look like Emmanuel and Elder have slotted in as our first choice fullbacks and Ingram is our number 1 in goal. And some great saves again from Ingram in the game to keep it at a clean sheet. And not much more you can ask from your keeper. I think he's doing a tremendous job. Surprised me to an extent. I think when he came into the club, it just seemed as if it was very much a depth signing and just someone to have a senior keeper challenging Long. But he's taken his opportunity and run with it.
Yeah, no, I think he's done outstanding. He has waited. He's bided his time. He's been patient, and he's obviously just been training hard, and he was ready. And the opportunity came, and as you say, he's grabbed it with both hands. And I think it's exactly what you need. That second keeper. They have to be ready for that opportunity, and he was. So, all credit to him.
No, absolutely. So, and then we'll just round off the game with our best 3, 2, and 1 from the game. I couldn't look past Ingram. I think that the body of his work over the first few games of the season, if not his performance in this one, was enough to give him best on ground from my point of view. Very closely edging out Honeyman, who I thought had a tremendous game running that midfield with his range of passing, his set pieces, and then of course capping it off with that goal just before half time. Was fantastic. And then on debut, giving the 1 vote to Adelican, who, as you said, that tremendous through ball for Honeyman's goal really showed that he's got that creative mind and can really help us unlock teams, which is going to be valuable as I think as the season progresses and teams might, come to the KCOM and sort of sit back and try and defend against us with 8, 9 players. Having those creative players who can break down defenses and find those passes is going to be super valuable. And look, it was a really promising debut from him. Who were your most valuable players on the pitch?
Look, they're very, very similar. I'm probably just switching Honeyman and Ingram, and then for the 1 point, it's a toss of the coin between Adelakun and Keane Lewis Potter for his goal. So, I mean, I'll probably just stay with the same, but I'll flip Honeyman and Ingram.
Fair enough. Look, we'll move on then and cover the off-field news of the week. We've already talked about both of these players, but of course, Adelakun joining on loan from Bristol City and then slotting into that starting 11 against Northampton, and then the signing that was not particularly surprising, given that the leak came through about 24 hours before it was officially announced, was Regan Slater joining from Sheffield United. And if there's a way to endear yourself to City supporters before you've set foot on the pitch, I think reminding us of the fantastic result at Wembley against Sheff Wednesday and how much that means as a Sheff United supporter, I think he's well on his way to winning over the supporters.
Yeah, look, I think it was quite an amusing little comment from him, but I think we've had not a bad history with recruiting players from Blades, so
yeah, that's true.
If he's anything like our last Sheff United player that we signed, we might have a bit of fun.
Yeah, no, definitely. Look, and he's a box-to-box midfielder from all reports. He sounds as if, as you've said, we're doing very well with signing players who are flexible, can play in a few different positions. So it sounds like if he's needed to slot in as a more defensive midfielder or a more attacking player, he's quite flexible in that regard. Yeah, and of course Adelakun, who can play, out wide. I think he was also playing probably on the point of that midfield as well, in that first half as well. And so he's another one who's quite a flexible attacking player.
Yeah, it's good. It's good to have the bit of flexibility, and I think he showed a little bit of smarts to initiate some of those rotations himself to come inside and play that ball for Honeyman. But I think what was one thing that was really impressive was he'd only just he's had maybe 2 days training or something with the team before starting that game. So
I think McGann was saying he'd played 60 minutes of an under-23s game for Bristol City, and that was pretty much the only match experience he'd had so far this season. And then presumably obviously training sessions and that sort of thing. But in terms of actual match conditions, it was a pretty impressive performance, all things considered.
Yeah, I know I wouldn't be able to perform like that if I'd had such a short preparation, but
I'd be blowing up after about 10 minutes, I reckon. We'll move on then, and we've talked about this player a little bit already, but our player focus for the week is George Honeyman, who, coming in from Sunderland in 2019. Was the captain of Sunderland, made his debut for Sunderland in the Premier League. So he had a lot of prestige around him as a signing for £400,000 as well. So not a particularly expensive one. And I think he certainly had his moments last season. I think we had episodes of the podcast where he sort of said, look, he's a player who is always putting the effort in, and you can always see him running around the pitch putting the effort in. And I think at championship level, he just wasn't getting the end product that was a reward for that effort. I think he's finding it a lot more at this level. He's been certainly a lot more creative with 3 assists from the 3 games so far. His set piece is looking great, capping it off with a goal, of course, on the weekend. But yeah, look, I think he's starting to come on as a signing, and I guess he's one of those players where at the start of the season we talked about to an extent the logic or trying to explain the logic behind McCann saying, sometimes it helps to take a step back to move forward, is players like Honeyman who might find their place in the side, get that confidence, get that chemistry with the other players around him, and then if, knock on wood, we are promoted, might then take to the championship a little bit better than he did last time around. But a promising start to his City career.
Yeah, look, I think last season was was tough for everyone. But I think what's most impressed me about him is that work ethic. He is 9 times out of 10, he's the man who's leading the press, which is and that lots of effort, and he's doing a lot of running, and and I think his set pieces over the last 12 months have drastically improved. He's getting a lot better and a lot more consistent with his deliveries now than he was 12 months ago. Look, he's certainly starting to settle in, and I think sort of as you say, we're starting to see probably what he's really capable of, and hopefully, he builds a bit of confidence with himself. We have a good season. We end up in the championship next year, and he carries on in the same vein, and then takes us up to the Prem. How's that sound?
Yes, it sounds pretty good to me. And look, I mean, I was sort of trying to think of a favorite moment from him or a highlight from him. And to be honest, I really struggled to think of one particular moment. And maybe someone, anyone listening in, if you want to comment in the comments of the video or anything like that on some particular moments that stand out. But to be honest, I think in a way that almost highlights the fact that he's a little bit like David Myler was, where when he's having a really good game, you almost don't notice him. And that's sort of the strength of his game, is that he just makes that midfield click without kind of poking his head above the ramparts. And I guess it's almost when he has a bad game, that's when he's noticed. And that's probably why he gets so many critics, is obviously a bad game's a whole lot more noticeable than a good game in the role that he plays. But I don't know, was there anything in particular that stands out for you other than, as you say, his set pieces and things like that sort of improving this season?
No, not really. And I think, as you said, like you compared him to David Myler, and I tried to think about David Myler, and the only thing I could think of is getting headbutted by Alan Pardew.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. So, but look, I think the way he's going this year, I think if we would have this conversation at the end of the season or in 12 months' time, we might have different answers. That goal on the weekend was pretty good. Nice run and a nice finish under pressure from not only defender but the goalkeeper rushing forward. So that could definitely could be a good memory come in a few months' time.
Well, look, it's interesting when you look at the fact that I think it was Northampton and Gillingham have basically, their only losses of the season have been against us. I mean, Northampton were undefeated before we played them. Gillingham have been undefeated since. So yeah, the goal against Northampton to seal the game is fantastic from him, and really sort of highlights his importance in the side. And dare I say it, I mean, Smallwood has started the season quite well as a captain, but if Honeyman continues in this vein, he sort of has that presence, and you can see why he was captain at Sunderland, and of course on the weekend had the armband in Smallwood's absence. But speaking of Smallwood and speaking of players who've been absent, we'll look ahead at the Plymouth game now. And I think McCann was speaking today already. So benefit of having this podcast a bit later in the week is that we have team news out of the press conference. And it sounds like Scott has re-injured his ankle. I don't know if it's the same ankle or his other ankle, but looks like he'll miss on the weekend. But in more promising news, it looks like Eves, Smallwood, and even Wilkes are all back in contention for the game. I think Eves is definitely going to be in the squad. I think Wilkes and Smallwood were a little bit more touch and go, but it's promising. It sounds as if we're starting to get a pretty full squad back together, which just makes more selection headaches.
Yeah, look, I'm actually kind of keen or excited to see Eves. At this level, and if he can replicate his previous form, and
we saw what he did in the FA Cup last season against League One opposition. So if it's more of the same of that, it's going to be exciting.
Yeah, and I think with some of those creative players that we were talking about earlier, like a Delacune, Honeyman now in a bit of form. If Honeyman's whipping balls like that on the weekend that he did for Keane Lewis Potter's goal, Eves he'll eat those every day, eat them up for breakfast. Nice balls into the box from a Delacune Eves should be all over those. So I'm excited to see him back. Not that the Magennis hasn't done his job, but
I was going to ask. I was going to ask: is it just essentially a straight swap for you of Eves in for Magennis?
I probably would. I think he worked hard, but he didn't. I don't really remember any definitive moments from him against Northampton anyway. But yeah, depth is always good. Having a full squad is always good. So if they're all back in, or Eves, say if Eves comes into the starting and the others are on the bench, or if they don't make it, they're obviously close. So. Yeah, look, I think we'll be in for a good game on the weekend anyway.
And it's, 3 games in a row now against promoted clubs. Plymouth, managed by Ryan Lowe, who took over in June of last year and guided them to promotion from League Two. So we've played all 3 promoted clubs in a row, and hopefully can make it 3 from 3. And it's really interesting. You start to look at that table, and if we do get the win against Plymouth, you're really starting to see a gap already forming. Us, Ipswich, up the top of the table, as well as Lincoln as well. So, if we are to get the win against Plymouth, it's still incredibly early days, but 4 games undefeated would start to put us in a pretty good position.
Yeah, look, I think anytime you can string wins together is great, but yeah, just to get off to such a strong start, if you can go 4, then, can you go 5? Can you go 6? You start just wondering how far you can go, and I think
confidence breeds confidence. The players will start to have that self-belief as well.
Absolutely. I mean, we definitely saw the flip side of that last year, where we couldn't buy a win if we tried towards the end of last season. But we seem to be getting them. We figured it out. We've got the formula at the moment, so we keep with it, and I think we'll just keep getting points.
Score prediction for this one: another clean sheet and 3 points.
Yeah, I see no reason why that would change. Let's another 2-0.
Sounds good to me. Well, thank you for joining me this week, Dan, to look ahead to that game. It's a short and sweet one. We only have the one game, which is a bit unusual. The fixture's been quite congested at the moment, but the game against Grimsby was, of course, called off because of COVID reasons for next week. So we do just have the one game this week, and then we'll be back again next week to look ahead to Fleetwood Town, I think it is.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. From what the city put out, I think about the games this month. I think Fleetwood's next, but we've got quite a busy month. I think we've got about 7 games this month. So
yeah, so it's nice to have a short and sweet start to the month before it gets too thick and fast.
Yeah, but look, it's been great to be on. Thanks for having me, and I'll probably be back next week.
Potentially, yeah. Well, no worries. And thank you everyone for listening in. Until next time, come on, City.